In the ancient lands of India, where the sacred rivers carried whispers of eternity, and the forests echoed with hymns from sages long forgotten, a figure emerged who has remained one of the most beloved and mysterious deities of the Hindu tradition. His form is unlike any other, both enchanting and puzzling, carrying with it symbols that reach far beyond the surface of myth. This is Ganesha, the elephant-headed god, the remover of obstacles, the guardian of thresholds, and the embodiment of wisdom. To look upon his form is to gaze into a tapestry of meanings woven across centuries of devotion and storytelling, each detail carrying the weight of profound spiritual truths. But why does he appear in this extraordinary way, with the body of a man and the head of a mighty elephant, and what is hidden in the sacred design of his appearance? The legends surrounding Ganesha's origin are varied and rich, each carrying a fragment of truth that reflects deeper spiritual insight. One of the most widely known stories tells of Parvati, the divine consort of Shiva, who fashioned a boy out of clay to guard her privacy as she bathed. When Shiva returned and found this boy denying him entry, a great conflict arose, and in his fury Shiva severed the child's head. Overcome with grief, Parvati demanded her son be restored to life, and so Shiva instructed his attendants to bring the head of the first being they encountered. It was the head of an elephant that was brought forth, and with it the boy was revived, transformed forever into Ganesha. This myth, while appearing to be a tale of chance and tragedy, conceals a symbolic message of extraordinary depth, revealing the union of human and divine, the merging of earthly form with cosmic wisdom. It is not merely a story of loss and restoration, but a parable of transformation. The clay boy represents the mortal, shaped by the elements of the earth, bound by limitations of the body and mind. The severing of the head is the dissolution of ordinary perception, the breaking of attachment to the ego, and the elephant's head is the granting of higher vision, expanded consciousness, and the strength to perceive a truth beyond illusion. Through this act, the myth tells us that true wisdom is not born from human pride, but from the humility of transformation, from allowing the old to die so that the eternal may be reborn within us. Ganesha's form, then, is not an accident of myth, but a spiritual map encoded in divine imagery, waiting to be unraveled. Before we dive deeper into the sacred symbolism of his appearance, I invite you to pause for a moment and take part in this journey. Write in the comments the affirmation, "I embrace the wisdom of Ganesha." By doing so, you not only connect with the energy of this timeless being, but also declare your openness to transformation and insight. And, if you are moved by this exploration, I encourage you to subscribe to the channel and give this video a like, so together we can continue to travel into the heart of ancient wisdom. Let us now turn to the sacred elements of Ganesha's form, and see how each part of his body speaks a language of its own. The elephant head is the most striking and unmistakable feature, and it holds within it layers of significance. In the Indian tradition, the elephant has always been a symbol of immense strength, memory, and intelligence. It is an animal that walks steadily, unshaken by obstacles in its path, moving with both dignity and power. To grant Ganesha the head of an elephant is to crown him with wisdom that is vast, enduring, and capable of removing the obstructions that hinder human progress. The large head reminds us to think expansively, to cultivate a mind that can embrace both the microcosm and the macrocosm, to understand not only the details of life, but also the grand design of existence. Equally important are Ganesha's ears, which are portrayed as wide and open, like great vessels of sound. They remind us that wisdom is not only in speaking but in listening, in being receptive to the truths that come from the cosmos, from scriptures, from the guidance of the inner self. The elephant's ears can catch even the faintest sound, and in Ganesha's form, they teach us the art of attentive listening, a skill that every seeker of truth must cultivate. His ears are an invitation to hear the mantras, the vibrations of the universe, and the silence that speaks louder than words. In contrast, his small mouth teaches the restraint of speech, the discipline of using words sparingly and with purpose. Here, his form becomes a teaching in balance. To listen more than we speak, to absorb wisdom before we express it. The eyes of Ganesha, often shown as small and piercing, carry yet another message. They symbolize the ability to focus, to see beyond the surface, to penetrate illusion and perceive reality as it truly is. While the world distracts us with endless appearances, Ganesha's eyes remind us to concentrate on the essential, to turn our gaze inward toward the eternal self. This symbolism echoes the practice of yogis, who, through meditation, narrow their vision not to see less, but to see more deeply. The small eyes of Ganesha reflect the concentrated power of inner sight, which sees not with the physical organ, but with the eye of the soul. Perhaps one of the most striking aspects of his form is his large belly, which is not merely an artistic exaggeration but a deliberate symbol of immense meaning. His belly represents the ability to contain the universe, to hold within himself all the dualities of life, joy and sorrow, creation and destruction, pleasure and pain, without being disturbed by them. In this way, Ganesha is not only the remover of obstacles, but also the one who teaches us to accept and digest the experiences of life. His belly is the cosmic womb where opposites are reconciled and transformed into wisdom. For the devotee, it is a reminder that true strength is not in avoiding difficulties, but in absorbing and transcending them, turning every experience into nourishment for the spirit. Closely connected to this is his single tusk, which has long been the subject of fascination and inquiry. Legends tell us that Ganesha broke one of his tusks in battle, while other tales claim he sacrificed it to write down the Mahabharata as the sage Vyasa dictated the epic. Whatever the origin of the story, the broken tusk holds profound symbolism. It signifies the transcendence of duality, the victory of unity over division. Where there were once two, only one remains, pointing to the truth that ultimate wisdom lies in oneness, beyond the play of opposites. It also represents the willingness to sacrifice, to let go of part of oneself for the sake of a greater truth. In this way, the single tusk is not a flaw but a mark of triumph, the sign of a being who has gone beyond conflict into the harmony of the eternal. His multiple arms, often depicted holding different objects, further reveal the many dimensions of his nature. Sometimes he holds a lotus, symbolizing purity and spiritual awakening. At other times he carries a goad, guiding the devotee forward, or a noose, representing the restraint of desires. Each item is not a weapon of destruction but a tool of teaching, shaping the journey of the seeker. Even the sweet modaka, often shown in his hand or near him, is a symbol of the bliss that comes from spiritual realization. The multiplicity of his hands and their attributes remind us that Ganesha is not confined to one aspect of life, but embraces the entire spectrum of existence, offering guidance in every realm. And yet, perhaps the most tender and human aspect of his form is the presence of the mouse, his humble vehicle, often shown near his feet. The tiny creature, in contrast to the immense figure of Ganesha, speaks volumes about humility and the coexistence of great and small. The mouse, with its restless energy, represents the desires of the human mind, quick, elusive, and ever hungry. By making the mouse his companion and mount, Ganesha teaches us that even the restless impulses of the mind can be mastered, tamed, and directed toward higher purpose. This union of opposites, the mighty elephant-headed god and the small, fragile mouse, is a profound reminder that nothing in creation is insignificant, and that true wisdom embraces all forms of life. In the vastness of his form and the richness of his symbolism, Ganesha embodies the eternal truth that divinity is not abstract but revealed through stories, forms, and images that guide the human heart toward understanding. His appearance is a living scripture, written not in words but in shapes, gestures, and sacred proportions. To meditate on his form is to enter a dialogue with the wisdom of ages, a conversation between myth and reality, between the human and the divine. In the myths that surround Ganesha's head, we find a story that mirrors the mysteries of life and death itself. It is said that Parvati, the divine consort of Shiva, created a child from the clay of her own body and breathed life into him. When Shiva returned and found this boy guarding her chamber, unaware of who he truly was, a confrontation ensued. In his fury, Shiva severed the boy's head. But when the truth of his origin was revealed, Shiva promised to restore the child to life. The first head encountered was that of an elephant, majestic and pure, and thus Ganesha was reborn. This story is not merely about divine drama, but about transformation, sacrifice, and renewal. The severed head symbolizes the death of ego, while the elephant head represents the awakening of wisdom and expanded consciousness. Ganesha's form is therefore a sacred teaching that the destruction of the small self allows the birth of the higher self. The elephant, in Indian culture, has always been a symbol of power, patience, and memory. By giving Ganesha the head of an elephant, the myth conveys that true wisdom does not rush or react hastily. Instead, it carries the weight of eternity in its silence. The large ears remind us to listen more than we speak, to hear the subtle truths hidden beneath the noise of the world. His small eyes are a lesson in focus, urging us to see deeply rather than broadly. The curved trunk, capable of uprooting trees and yet sensitive enough to pluck a single blade of grass, represents adaptability and mastery over opposites. It tells us that spiritual growth requires both strength and gentleness, both firmness and sensitivity. Every aspect of the elephant's head is a coded reminder of how to live with balance and awareness. His pot-bellied body also holds profound meaning. Ganesha's belly is vast enough to contain the entire universe, symbolizing the capacity to hold both joy and sorrow, sweetness and bitterness, without rejection. It represents the principle of equanimity, the yogic state of accepting all experiences as part of the divine play. In some traditions, it is said that Ganesha's belly holds the cosmos itself, reminding us that the outer world is but a reflection of the inner world. The serpent tied around his waist further deepens this teaching. The serpent, in yogic symbolism, is the power of Kundalini, the primal energy that lies coiled within every human being. By wearing it as a belt, Ganesha shows mastery over primal energies, indicating that he is not bound by them but harnesses them with conscious awareness. Another intriguing detail is Ganesha's broken tusk, which carries its own mythology. One legend tells us that he broke it off and used it as a pen to write down the epic Mahabharata as it was dictated by sage Vyasa. Another story says he broke it in battle, sacrificing a part of himself for a greater cause. The broken tusk is thus a symbol of selflessness, of the willingness to endure pain for the sake of truth. It reminds us that perfection does not lie in outward completeness, but in inner strength and sacrifice. Just as a broken tusk does not lessen the power of the elephant, our own scars and wounds can become sources of wisdom when embraced with courage. The single remaining tusk stands for unity, the merging of duality into oneness. Equally rich in meaning are the objects Ganesha holds in his multiple hands. Often, he is depicted with a modaka, a sweet dumpling, representing the bliss of spiritual realization, the sweetness that comes from walking the path of truth. In another hand, he carries an axe, symbolizing the cutting away of ignorance and attachment. Sometimes he holds a rope, which signifies pulling the devotee closer to the divine. In yet another hand, he may hold a lotus, a symbol of purity and spiritual awakening that rises unstained from the mud. Each object reveals a path, a reminder of both the struggles and the rewards of inner practice. Together, they tell us that wisdom is not passive, it is active, cutting through obstacles, guiding us closer to truth, and rewarding us with the nectar of realization. At his feet, a small mouse is often seen as his vehicle, an image that seems almost absurd at first glance. How could a mighty elephant-headed deity ride on a tiny mouse? But here again lies deep symbolism. The mouse represents desire, restless, small and quick, always gnawing and never satisfied. Ganesha's mastery over the mouse reveals his ability to control desire, to ride upon it rather than be ridden by it. This teaches us that spiritual growth does not come by destroying desire, but by mastering it, transforming it into a vehicle of consciousness. Just as Ganesha sits calmly while the mouse rests at his feet, we too must learn to keep our desires under our command, not allowing them to dominate our lives. Just as his stories flow from age to age, the wisdom of his appearance continues to guide those who seek deeper understanding. And so, the sacred form of Ganesha does not belong only to the past, but lives in the present moment, as a guide for every seeker walking the timeless path.